Good morning, everyone. I think we are going to go ahead and get started. My name is Sarah Nordoff, and I am the Director of Enrollment Management at Catlin Gabel School. We're so glad you could join us this morning for our session on financial assistance. I'm joined today by my colleague, Mary Jacob. She is the Director of Financial Assistance at Catlin Gabel, and she's going to walk us through the process of applying for financial assistance and give you some more information about the vendor that we use to process applications and answer any questions that you may have. We will certainly leave time at the end for Q&A. If you have questions as we go through the information today, you're more than welcome to put them into the chat. Don't feel that you need to wait till the end of the remarks, but we will answer questions at the end of the remarks. So we will save time to be able to do that in the latter half of the hour that we have together. I do want to remind everyone that this event is being recorded. And we do that because it enables families who aren't able to make it this morning to be able to access the information. We'll put it on our website later this week. And so you'll be able to access it again, and families who weren't able to be here can download the information. I do want to say before I hand it over to Mary that we do so many of these information sessions for so many different purposes. This one, I think, is the most important one that we do, honestly. Our commitment to financial assistance is a long-standing value of Catlin Gabel School. And it's terribly important to us to be able to provide access to students to the education. It's something that is a core part of our mission. And we reserve a substantial portion of our operating budget every year to financial assistance. And for us, it is about providing that access, but it's also about the strength of the education that we provide. We know that it's so terribly important for those different perspectives to be in the classroom and for students to hear from many different students from many different backgrounds to enrich the conversation. So it's both an access commitment, but it's also part of how the education is better, I think, by having this commitment to financial assistance. So we're so glad that you're here this morning. I'm going to turn it over to Mary, and then I'll join Mary at the end of her remarks to help with our Q&A.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I just want to start out a little bit by showing this chart about what we had been able to allocate for the current school year that we just started. You can see at the top the 4 different tuition points that we have, and you can see an average financial assistance of $24,690, and that just includes all of the folks in our regular program. The household incomes that this average comes from range from around $34,000 to $318,000, and I know some people are surprised that people in that higher income can qualify, but you can qualify if you have, a child in college, or at least 2 or 3 or 4 even students in tuition charging schools. So you can qualify, probably not as much, but you can get into that qualifying level. The total amount of assistance that we distributed was $5.3 million this year. So that's substantial. It shows our commitment to the program. 28% of our students received financial assistance this current school year. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but the average need met was 91% this year. Typically, it's a little more, but this year we extended some additional dollars to families who experienced financial hardship due to the COVID-19 related closures and business downturns. So, but we will talk a little bit about more what average need met means. So what is financial assistance? Basically, it's tuition based on assessed financial needs. So you would be, we have our published tuition, and then people who qualify can get a reduced amount of tuition based on their financial circumstances. So we calculate it by a service that we provide, that we subscribe to, called SSS, and we'll go through that process a little bit. We'll take a look at that. As Sarah said, it's a priority for the school. We have a substantial part of our operating budget that is allocated towards financial assistance. And it also comes from generous donors who provide financial assistance, who provide donations specifically for financial assistance, and they're not used for any other purpose. And we're also a Malone's Family Foundation school, and that's we're pretty proud of that. We're only one of 40 or so in the country, the only one in Oregon, and it's a foundation that is committed to helping bright and capable students access education that they otherwise might not be able to. So, so that's part of our tasks as well at Catlin Gabel. We seek out and name those kids every year. Sarah, was there something else you wanted to say about the Malone Foundation?
No, only that it is the case that a select group of schools receive the Malone funding, and it is determined by the Malone Foundation as schools who they feel are providing particularly innovative types of education. So we are really proud of the fact that Catlin is one of those schools. Yeah.
Thank you. So other kinds of financial assistance that are provided here in our program is we have a merit-based scholarship for those who qualify. We won't talk too much about that here because this is information about our need-based program. We have monthly payment plans, and those are available to all families. So once your tuition is determined, or even if you're paying you don't qualify and you're going to pay the full published tuition, we have payment plans to choose from. And then additionally, there are separate funds set aside other than the tuition assistance for books, laptops, trips, activities, robotics, tutoring, all the things that that will help a student fully participate in the Catlin Gabel experience. So we don't want students to feel like, families to feel like they can barely make the tuition and then their child can't access any of the other offerings. So we have those funds set aside. We even have a lunch program for those who qualify for that as well. So that's in essence, what financial aid is. Who is responsible for the cost of private school? Primarily, it's the child's family. This includes both parents, even if they're divorced, separated, or never been married. We ask that the entire family participate in this process, and that it is their responsibility to the extent that they're able. So we ask that everybody look at all the different sources of ability to pay that they have: grandparent savings, trusts, outside scholarships, all of those things. Once you've looked at all those things and you still feel that the tuition is out of reach, then financial assistance is the next step for those families. To get ready, what should you do to prepare? To get ready, start collecting all of your financial information, your income stuff, and your property for your home or any other properties that you might own. Use these to complete your SSS application. That's that provider that I mentioned earlier. You're going to input all of your income, your assets, your debts, all of that stuff will go into the application. Make sure to include non-taxable income, such as pre-tax savings out of your checks, any Social Security, things like that. So you would need to include, there's places to include all that information. For business owners, we understand, we work with a lot of business owners in our program, and we definitely understand that it's not quite as simple. So we suggest using your quarterly statements if that's something that you do, or even try using a prior year that has similar results for your placeholder until everything is settled. And we understand this last year or so is going to be kind of quite different for all of us, I'm sure. Look at your budget. We suggest looking at it as a sort of a monthly amount. Add all your sources of income, subtract any expenses, reprioritize and subtract any discretionary spending that you can control. And we ask that you consider what you can pay on a sustainable level, on a long-term commitment. Families are expected to continue paying the same level of tuition for the duration of enrollment unless there's a qualifying change of circumstances. Like, for example, if you get a second child at Catlin or another tuition charging school, so you're paying 2 tuitions instead of 1, that would be a qualifying change. But other than that, we definitely want families to look at it on a sustainable level, on a long-term commitment. So look at that monthly budget and think about what you can realistically afford. There is a place in the application that will ask you what you can afford. So please be very realistic and thoughtful about that. The committee does look at that information. How do I apply? So it's basically pretty straightforward. So you complete that parent financial statement at SSS. That's what the application is called. It's $51 to apply. If your family qualifies for free federal lunch on the program, then it will be automatically waived at the payment screen. Otherwise, it will be $51. In the other considerations section, which is at the end, we ask that you please explain any changes in circumstances or special circumstances, especially as a lot of families are affected by COVID-19 with their jobs or businesses that they own. So when there's going to be wide changes from one year to another, that's a place that we definitely look to see the explanation of wide ranges in income. So after you complete all of that and submit it, then you can start uploading your tax documents. And we do need this for verification purposes. So for first-time applicants, you will upload your 2018 tax documents and W-2s if you have them. And then everyone should upload their 2019 documents and W-2s if you have them. All of that, as you can see, is due on January 21st. So there's time to do that. Again, here's just a quick summary. Everything is due January 21st. Couple of points to really emphasize here is that please do not wait until your admission decision to let us know that you need financial assistance. And do not wait until, as I mentioned earlier, the year after you enroll to apply, unless there's a change of circumstances, a qualifying change. We are not able to, have a healthy and sustainable program if too many people come in full pay and then change to financial assistance unexpectedly. So it's just a way that we can sustain the program and plan out financially. And then just make sure to make those deadlines. And if there's some circumstance where you need to let us need an extension, just let us know, and we can accommodate that. We definitely work with families on that. So I'm going to go really quickly over to the SSS application and just go through. This is what you'll see if for those of you that are unfamiliar with the process. So you can log in. It will if you have a past account, it will remember it. You can just recover it with forgot password or something like that. So when you first come in, you're going to see your dashboard here. And this is a really great and helpful screen. This document here, download the PFS workbook. It's very, I definitely recommend everybody do this and read this booklet. It has a lot of super helpful tips and information and advice. So I suggest having this open at the same time as you're filling in the application. And that's easily accessible right here on your dashboard. The other things that you can see here on your dashboard is your outstanding documents. And this is where it's so important to use the SSS system to upload your taxes rather than sending them to us directly, because then you'll be able to see your status right here. And then you'll know exactly what's been received, what's missing, what's outstanding, and it'll all be, you'll have access to it. So this is why we prefer that you upload them directly to SSS, and they have quite a very good security information. So it's a secure upload and for sensitive documents of this type. So they have they've worked on that, and it's very secure. Whereas emailing them to me is not going to be as secure. You can upload them to SSS, or you can mail them with the US mail to SSS, but just make sure they get there in time by the deadline. If you've had previous applications, you can see down here your history. So that's also really helpful. So I'm going to go and click on complete my PFS. And you can see over here on the left-hand navigation, all of the different steps. So once you complete all of them, you'll see that it will check it off. And then at the end, you can pay and submit. And then, as I said, if you qualify for the free federal lunch program, then that will be automatically waived. The sections are pretty straightforward. I'm going to click on parent guardian information. And anything that you see in red is required. So, so it will prompt you if there's something that is missing. I wanted to point out here at the end, additional parent living in the house would go here. So if you are married to somebody or living with somebody, then that other person would be listed here. If your child's other parent is in another household, then you would say no here and put them as an additional parent. If you put parent B here, it thinks that the parent is living in your house. So, and then it would ask you for all of their income and everything. So we don't want to put a separate household here under parent B. You want to put them under additional parent. And then that parent would have to complete their own application. So I just wanted to point that out. And then up here, as you can see in the upper right, you can either save and exit. So you can come back and do this at different points. You don't have to do it all in one sitting. Or you can save and go to next. And that'll just take you through these steps 1 through 20. I'm going to click on student applicant information real quick. And as you can see, there's some red. So those are all required steps. Here you can put your first child, and if you have a second child, you can add another applicant here. So if you're applying for financial aid for both your children or more than one child, you would use this button here. And then for step 3 here is for students for children in your household that aren't going to be in school or aren't going to be applying for tuition, but we want them counted as members of your household. So if you have a younger child who's not quite in school or daycare, they would go here as a dependent, not as an applicant. So of all your kids, you'll either have an applicant or a dependent. And then it will just keep going through, and The questions are pretty straightforward. That PFS workbook is helpful for some of these other sections here that could be a little bit confusing about where to put this amount of money, where to put that amount of money. So look to that workbook. You can also email me. I'm happy to answer questions about different types of content and where to put that information. One thing that I want to mention is that for any one piece of income or debt, please only put it in one field, and you just have to decide which field that is, either by looking at the help book or calling me or emailing me. People sometimes make the mistake of saying, oh, well, it's this, but it's also this. And it sounds good, but then it's going to count that income twice. And we don't want to do that. We want to get the real authentic picture of your financial. Under select schools, our school, if you know the code, you could just put it right here. Otherwise, you can search by name. And then I'm just going to go ahead and put it in. I know our code. And here is where you will then assign here. You can assign students to that school. So maybe you're applying to Catlin Gabel, but also to some other schools, and you want to assign this student to Catlin Gabel, but maybe you added other students here that you want to assign to the other schools that you've listed. So this is the place where you allocate which schools you're applying for which students. So I'm going to exit out of here. Like I said, you can go through these sections and use that workbook. This other considerations is what I'm talking about for it's a place for you to do additional explanation for things that you couldn't explain in the form, or special circumstances, or explaining differences in income. So that would be the place where we would look. We read all of those comments, so please be as detailed as possible about your ability to pay tuition. After that's done, you pay and submit, and then you can upload your documents. Hopefully everyone has all of their 2019 documents all done. And then once everything is done, you'll be able to see in here all the schools that you've selected, and you'll be able to see the family report once all the calculation is done. So I'm going to go back to our presentation. So once you get all of that information in there, how is financial assistance calculated? So basically, once you submit your information, SSS will, the goal of the calculation is to determine your discretionary income for your household. It's per household. So what it's going to do is add up all your taxable and non-taxable income. It's going to subtract out an income protection allowance based on family size. So a family of 4 needs X amount of dollars for the necessities, and it's going to just take that off. And then it's going to take off any eligible allowances and expenses like taxes and medical. And then depending on your financial situation, it's going to calculate your net worth and maybe perhaps add a little bit more back in. So a typical family with a home and a couple of normal incomes and a small bank account, it's not going to add too much back in. What that net worth calculation is for families who may have several rental properties and higher investment income. Those are the families where it would necessarily add back in a few thousand to more than that into their ability to pay. And that's sort of an equalizer for families who don't have lots of rental properties and high investment income. So, most families, that's not going to affect them too much. And that's basically net worth is your assets minus your debt. So if that's a positive number, then it will look at it and it might add a little bit more back in. If your debts are more than your assets, then that will be zero and it would not be a factor. So once all that is determined, SSS will calculate your expected family contribution towards tuition. So it takes that final discretionary income amount and it will say, okay, we're going to take a percentage of that. And it could be anywhere from 17 to 39%. Obviously, the 17% would be lower income and up to 39% of discretionary income for higher income households. And then it takes that expected family contribution and basically divides it among all the kids in tuition charging schools. We at our stage we might prorate that because our tuition is probably going to be higher than another tuition at like a daycare or something like that. On the other end, if you have a child going to college, then perhaps that tuition will be higher than ours. So we would prorate it that way as well. So finally, then all that information comes, we verify it against the taxes and we correct any issues that we might see. We also consider any special circumstances that were listed in the application, and we can use our professional judgment to make any adjustments to that. And then all final award decisions are based on our policy and our available budget. And so we make those determinations. Here is an example of how a tuition is calculated. Once a family is admitted and we have the budget available for that family or that child. And here's where I spoke earlier about percent of need met. So our goal is to meet between 85 and 95% of demonstrated need. And that demonstrated need is based on this application process. So I use an example of this current middle school tuition, $34,300. And this family went through the SSS application and their EFC, expected family contribution, was calculated at $17,500. So that's what they could afford to pay for this student. So we subtract that and their financial need is $16,800. So if we were to award 100% of need, then we would give them that full $17,500, or the difference. We would give them that full $16,800. Sorry, but we, in order to serve more families, we cap that at about 85 to 95%. So in this example, I took 90% of demonstrated need. So their tuition reduction would be $15,120. And so their need-based tuition ends up being $19,180. And so that's what they would, if they decided to enroll, then that's what they would pay for their tuition. And like I said, they can pay that all at once. They can pay that in two other payment plans that we have available. One of them is a 10-month plan, and one of them is loosely quarterly plan. And for families in the financial assistance program, we would never charge a service fee for any of those payment plans. So hopefully this illustrates how the tuition would be reduced. A few questions that come up regularly are here. We do ask that families, once you're in the program and enrolled, you do have to go through this process annually because we do want to make sure that you're continuing to demonstrate need. And as long as you demonstrate the same level of need, you can expect from year to year the same level of financial assistance. Unless your situation changes, like I said, if your family size changes, or if you have more children in tuition charging schools, those are the kind of things that are ordinarily considered for different levels of need, different levels of tuition assistance. If parents are divorced or separated, like I said, both households are required to complete the process and participate. Obviously, there are extraordinary circumstances, and we do consider those on a case-by-case basis. In the past, examples of those kinds of extraordinary circumstances are the other parent was incarcerated, the other parent was physically disabled, permanently disabled status, that other parent is a physical and health and physical danger to the family. So those are the kinds of circumstances where we have considered in the past to only consider one household in this process. Do both parents have to earn income? Yes, they do, when all the children in the household reach first grade and above. And definitely we that's not something that we are strict about it, but we do work with families when one parent has not been working outside the home for a while. It's just something that is an expectation that you ultimately reach earning income. So we definitely try to give advance notice, hey, on this award, hey, next year your other child will be, out of kindergarten. So we expect that you start thinking about earning income, and, we work with people on that. If ultimately that parent doesn't earn income, then our policy would be to impute an income and put one in, and that will reduce your financial assistance. But the idea for us is that we just want to make sure that families are doing all that they can do on their end prior to accessing financial assistance, and that their commitment to their child's education is the most that it can be. When will I find out my financial assistance decision? So if your child is selected for admission, you will receive your financial assistance decision shortly after your admission. So it will come via separate email. If your child is placed in the wait pool, you will not immediately receive information about your financial assistance. So from year to year, we have had kids come off the wait pool and still be able to receive financial assistance, but we generally give out all the money at each round. So we don't leave any money on the table. But we have been known to get money back in from families who decline or make a different decision, or even from our own families who end up deciding to go relocate or change schools for their child, maybe at the high school level. There are payment plans available. As I mentioned, there's a 10-month plan, a sort of quarterly plan, and pay all at once plan. And then the last thing that comes up sometimes is, will Catlin Gabel ask for a credit check? And the answer is no. So those are just a few of the FAQs. There are several others that are listed on our website. So I wanted to go a little bit into our website just to show you around a little bit. I apologize for not having it up. If you go to our main page, once it loads, if you go over to the menu, under admission, it's under tuition and financial assistance. There's a lot of really great updates here that we've made. We make updates every year. So once our new tuition gets announced for 21-22 school year, you can come right here and we're going to update this section. So you'll be able to see what next year's full tuition is going to be, the published tuition. Here we have information about our non-tuition expenses. So you can see it's here it lists the division. So you'll understand that preschool through fifth would not have any book charges or anything like that. But middle and upper school do. For upper school, laptops are required. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have additional help for families to be able to make sure they have all the required materials and equipment. So that's available. And in fact, when you get your financial assistance decision, you'll know right away if you qualify for books and laptop financial assistance. That comes all together. Like I said, here's a number of optional programs and some of their estimated costs, just to give you an idea. And there are those additional funds to help make sure your child can participate. There's some athletic information. Here's an explanation of the different tuition payment plans. So that's helpful for families to read through. And like I said, this is available to all families, whether or not you're in the financial assistance program. Here's another summary of some key dates and information. I wanted you to also, here's the other FAQs, but I also wanted to show you the average need-based tuition. So here's some information that can help families maybe see themselves in the program. So it's based on whether you have one child in tuition charging school, 2 children, or 3 or more. So the disclaimer here is that based on, this is charted based on families, children in tuition, school, and income, but there are many other factors, as you saw in the application, that go into this. So just keep that in mind. It takes in all the other factors like debts and assets and all of that other stuff. So please read the disclaimer and understand that a little bit. We have some policy information and some other helpful links. These are all very helpful to go through. So some of these are like the PFS workbook is linked here also, but you can get that right in your dashboard. And help submitting required documents, so the upload process. So definitely look through these. The Spanish version here of the PFS workbook is not quite ready yet. It'll be linked there when it's ready. So definitely read through this website. We put a lot of great information here. So I wanted to now show you the, their SSS support page is also very helpful. You can ask them anything about technical questions or anything that about help uploading documents or help sending documents. They're very well staffed, so they're and they have quite a few weekend and evening hours right now during this busy season. So I encourage you to contact them. One of the things they might say is, oh, that contact the school for that, and then you can email me or call me. My information is there. That's my extension, or you can email there, our enrollment team. So I wanted to open it up now for questions, and hopefully Sarah and I can do teamwork, tag team, and get those answered for you.
Great.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Mary. We have a few questions that have come into the chat already. And as Mary just said, we welcome additional questions. We'll stay on until 9:30 Pacific time. So feel free to keep asking your questions if you have them. So I'm just going to go in order here. And I will say too, if we don't get to all the questions today, as Mary said, please reach out to Mary anytime. She's more than happy to connect with you if we're not able to get your questions answered right now. So Mary, this first question is about applying for, so if a family has a student who's coming, who's not a degree seeking student, it's a student who may just be here for a year, are those families eligible for financial assistance? And relatedly, families who are applying who aren't in the Portland metro area, does it matter in terms of location if they are eligible?
So as far as location, it doesn't matter. As long as you're eligible, need-based requirements, then you can apply. If you're admitted, you will be allocated based on your need and qualifications. So any other place in the country, it doesn't matter as long as you can fill it out and provide your tax documents. As far as the 1 year students, it hasn't come up. There's not a specific, we don't have a specific policy against it. So we would definitely consider it on a case-by-case basis.
Great, thanks, Mary. And this is a question about the W-2s. Do families need to wait to have their 2020 W-2 before filling out their application?
Well, they probably may or may not have it by January 21st. So just definitely put your best estimates in there. If you have it, that's ideal.
If they apply and once they do get it, should they upload it even if it's after the deadline?
The 2020 W-2s are not part of the required documents, so they don't have to upload that.
Okay, great.
They'll be able to, you'll be able to see under your required documents section what is required, and that's all you need to upload.
Great.
By the 21st deadline, January 21st.
What if families' tax reports, Mary, are not in English? If they're in another language, should they try to have those translated before submitting?
That would be appreciated. Yes, that would be appreciated. If it's cost prohibitive, then you just let us know.
Great. Let's see. This parent worked for a company that went under, and so they're not able to get tax documents from them anymore. If they're applying for the first time to get their 2018 tax submission, what should they do?
If they're not able to get their 2018 tax documents, it's not as urgent. Just let me know. I mean, obviously, there's nothing they can do about that. The verification will be based on 2019. The point of having the 2018s is just for new families, just so we have a little bit of something to compare it to.
And if families are applying who are in separate households, do they each have to create an account, and do they each pay for the account?
Yes, that is correct. So each household has a separate application, a separate fee, and it's completely 100% confidential. You don't have to share information, and no one sees the other's information. So it's very secure, very confidential. The system will match it up and send it to the designated schools based on the child's name and birth date. So once it gets to the school, it'll be kind of synced up, but it's completely secure from each household. So you don't have to worry about sharing information.
Great. You had mentioned earlier, Mary, that we meet a range of around 85 to 95% of demonstrated need. How do we determine who's in the 85% and who's in the 95%?
I mean, generally speaking, it's based on the higher incomes are met at 85%, and the lower incomes are met at 95%, and then the middle is 90%. So we really use those three markers. And one of the things we take in mind is, as I mentioned, that what the family feels they can pay.
Great. And for families who have little,
sorry to interrupt. One more thing. One of the things to think about in what you feel you can pay is, let's just say, for the first year, grandma or grandpa or uncle or auntie can help pay, but that's only for 1 year. So we would, that's something that we should know, because the following year they're not able to do that. It's hard for us to make that big adjustment. So keep it, like I said, keep in mind on a long-term horizon. So if someone gives you a gift, try to spread that out in your calculation of your household budget. So
Great. Thanks, Mary. It's good advice. Lost my place here. So families who have young children at home, and one of the parents or guardians is staying at home to care for those children, does that affect their application process? Are we requiring them to earn income?
no, that's why the rule is, our guideline is that once they're in first grade and above, because, for one parent to go to work and pay daycare and taxes, is that really financially, beneficial? And a lot of times it isn't. So honoring that parent's ability to stay home while the child is young is part of our considerations.
What if it's a case, Mary, where it's separate households, but only one parent is actually going to be paying for the education? Do we still require both parents or guardians to send in an application?
Yes. Because our process is need-based, and it's not based on a family's willingness or custody agreement or anything like that. So it's need-based, and that's to honor our donors and tuition-paying families who are making up this resource.
Great. And what if it's a family dynamic where one of the biological parents doesn't have contact with the kids? They live with another parent and a step parent.
Yeah. We work with all kinds of families, so we definitely consider special circumstances on a case-by-case basis. So that would be a conversation.
Great. I'll answer this next one, Mary. It's wondering how much tuition goes up every year. And typically, Catlin Gabel is very much in line with independent schools across the country in that our tuition goes up annually in the range of 3 to 5%. We have very occasionally years where, let's see, Mary, I've been here for 10 years, and I can remember one year when it was a little bit higher than 5, and that's because we rolled in an experiential week program that was an added expense for families. And so we rolled it into tuition that year so we could absorb it and have tuition really be covering the real cost of attending the school for the year. But generally speaking, you can expect it to be between 3 and 5%. And we announced that to families before re-enrollment. So for the re-enrollment process, families are required to re-up with the school by February 1st, and tuition is announced the first week of January. So you have time to consider whether it's going to be doable for your family. But Mary has that information prior to when she's calculating financial assistance. We have the tuition increase information. So we're able to make financial assistance awards based on what we know the tuition increase will be for the following year. So, are there questions?
I went ahead.
Go ahead, Mary.
I just wanted to bring everyone's attention. We have some other upcoming events here for all grade levels. So registration is open and available. There's an event tonight for upper school. You should find the link right in your portal for that. So you can just go click on the link and get right into the webinar for tonight. And for ninth grade applicants who could be interested, the Palma Scholars Program is that merit scholarship that I mentioned at the top of the presentation. It's merit-based. So if you go into our website and look under the Palma section, you can learn a little bit more about what that is, or attend next week's info session. So please consider signing up for some of these other events.
Thanks, Mary. A couple more questions and then we'll wrap up. If families have to apply every year for financial assistance, does the award change dramatically from year to year? How sure can they feel that their child will be able to continue to attend?
Yeah. Yes, they do. You do reapply every year, just so we can reiterate your need. We want to make sure that families continue to demonstrate need to access the need-based assistance resources. If you demonstrate a similar level of need, then you can expect a similar level of assistance. For the vast majority of the families in the program, you know, things don't change very much from year to year. You have your same job, you have your same house, you have your same kids. So then you can expect the same level of assistance. If something were to change, or if we did see, you know, changes in income for the better, and we noticed a pattern over a couple of years, then what we try to do with families, if we're going to make an adjustment in their assistance, is we let them know in advance, and then we phase it in over a couple years, maybe 3 years, to ease that adjustment. So we don't want to make families feel like a sudden change that they can't adjust for in their own household expenses, or fear every year if they're going to be able to come. We don't want the program to do that. And so we're committed to making families feel comfortable and confident that their child will be here until graduation, if that's what they choose.
We don't apply for FA now. So this last question, if this family is asking, if they don't apply for financial assistance now, could they apply if they have an older child? So let's say they have a child come into the school, they go to college, and they have another child come in. Could they at that time apply for financial assistance, given they're paying for college tuition?
Yes, that would be a qualifying change of circumstances. You would apply the year your child went to college, though, not after.
Great. And I'll answer this last question, Mary, around does applying for financial assistance hinder your chances of being accepted? And I do think it's important to know that the assessment of your children's admission is a separate process from the assessment for financial assistance. So it's the financial assistance committee are separate folks than the admission committees. And there's confidentiality in that financial assistance process, as Mary mentioned. So there isn't conversation back and forth about who's applied and who hasn't. That's contained within the enrollment team. And when we make the final selection based on the committee's feedback of candidates to select for the school, for the first round of admission, we are able to make the majority of admission decisions without financial assistance as a factor, but not all of them. It is a generous but limited financial assistance budget, so it does play somewhat of a role even in that first round of admission, but not as much as it does at the wait pool stage. At the wait pool stage, sometimes we have money that doesn't come back into the budget. In other words, we've distributed all of the financial assistance awards in the first round of admission. And if all of those families say yes, then we don't have any budget left. And so, but we may have a spot open up that we can fill in the wait pool, but we don't have financial assistance budget left. So that's when sometimes it can be very need sensitive at the wait pool stage. And I've yet to see a year where we haven't had some financial assistance available at different times of wait pool. Yeah. So it's pretty rare that we don't have any, but it does tend to be a more of a need sensitive process at that moment. Yeah. So, but I will say, if you need financial assistance to be able to come to the school, you should apply for financial assistance. It isn't to anyone's benefit to not apply for assistance and try to do it, right? Because you're hoping that will increase your chances of admission to the school. It's just, that will be really hard to sustain for a family. And as Mary mentioned, you can't you can't come into the school and then apply later unless you have a qualifying change of circumstances. So please do apply if you need it.
I reiterate that. Please apply if you need it.
Yes. All right, I think we're going to wrap up there. Thank you, Mary, for all of your helpful information. Thanks everybody for coming today. We are, as we mentioned, always available for more questions as you move through this process, both on the admission side and on the financial assistance side. And we hope we get to meet you soon. We're sorry that we have to do this in a way that feels very impersonal,
Yes.
but we hope we get to meet you, and I hope that this morning session has been helpful. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great rest of your day.